the FBI has released a report that has more information about their inquiry into Hillary Clinton's use of her private email server, and it sheds light on so much more that we didn't previously know about. So the New York Times explains that the documents provided a number of new details about Mrs. Clinton's private server, including what appeared to be a frantic effort by a computer specialist to delete an archive of her emails even after a congressional committee had requested that they be preserved. Among other key findings in the FBI documents, Mrs. Clinton regarded emails containing classified discussions about planned drone strikes as, quote, routine. She said she was unaware of or misunderstood some classification procedures. Colin Powell, a former Secretary of State, advised her to be very careful in how she used email. So this is really interesting, I think, because she used to tout what Colin Powell did when he was Secretary of State. I mean, on the debate stage, she talked about how, look, Condoleezza Rice, Colin Powell, they all used private emails. Well, yeah, they used private emails, but they didn't have their own private email server set up in their home. That's an entirely different story. So this is really interesting. Now, there are a couple things in here that I want to highlight. So when it comes to the deleted emails, the unnamed specialist, well, he deleted her archive of emails just weeks after her use of a private email server had become known to the public. So all of a sudden, people are finding out that she had a private email server in her home and they're deleting emails. And they described it literally as an oh shit moment because the guy realized that he didn't delete a bunch of emails that he was supposed to. Now, when it comes to her actual interview with the FBI, they don't have the transcript. They didn't record it, but they do say that basically she played dumb for the whole thing. So dozens of times during her interview, Mrs. Clinton said she did not remember details about the server or guidance she had received on handling classified information. In its summary of the investigation, the FBI said that Mrs. Clinton had emailed Colin Powell, a former Secretary of State, a day after she was sworn into office about Mr. Powell's use of a personal email account when he was the country's top diplomat. Mr. Powell warned Mrs. Clinton that if she used her BlackBerry for official business, those emails could become official records and subject to the law. Mr. Powell apparently implying that he was cautious in his use of a personal email account added, "Be very careful. I got around it all by not saying much and not using systems that captured the data." According to the summary of her interview, Mrs. Clinton said that she did not know exactly what Mr. Powell was saying in that email and that his message did not factor into her decision to use a personal email account. So basically, she called up Colin Powell when she became Secretary of State and said, "Hey dude, look, you used a private email, right? I mean, we both want to get around these FOIA requests. We don't want, there to be any public transparency. So if I use my BlackBerry, would that be okay?" And he's telling her, be very careful because that can still be subject to FOIA requests if you use it for official State Department business. And so she probably thought about that and said, you know what? I'll go the extra mile. I'll set up a private email server in my home. This is still unbelievable to me. A private email server. You created a server in your home to avoid transparency. This, it's funny because this is the type of things that you see in movies where the politicians are just so stereotypically corrupt that they don't even care. They go to these great lengths to shirk accountability. And we're seeing it in real life. It's not a movie. And furthermore, she always touts her resume about how she's this capable and qualified candidate. Meanwhile, she maintains that she didn't know about the classified markings. So she honestly didn't think to even ask someone that when she saw the C in parentheses in documents that she either sent or received, or she replied to them and then they were included in it, she didn't think to ask, maybe I should ask them what this C means. No? I mean, who would do that? And look, Hillary Clinton is not stupid. She's very intelligent, so you can't use that defense. We don't believe you. Someone who was a former first lady, a senator. I mean, come on, Hillary. We know that you knew about those markings, but we all know it's a great legal defense. It got you out of being indicted. So, more on this. She also said that she did not recall receiving any emails she thought should not be on an unclassified system. The FBI documents say she relied on state officials to use their judgment when emailing her and could not recall anyone raising concerns with her regarding the sensitivity of information she received at her email address, they say. Oh, is that so? Because there was a scathing audit by the State Department that was released where officials maintained that they told you about this. They warned you about this private email server and how it could be under attack and how it's making you vulnerable, but yet you chose to keep that anyway and still send and receive emails as Secretary of State. You conducted official business on an insecure email account and server, and that was after people warned you. You said it yourself, quote, "I don't want to risk anything personal getting out." So it's very clear here. And let me remind you, this individual was not indicted. This report was released by the FBI, who couldn't even make the recommendation that she should be indicted in spite of all of this evidence. How crazy is that? This is not a democracy. If our public officials cannot be held accountable, that's very authoritarian and it's very troubling. So you can get in office and be as corrupt as you want to be, and there's not going to be any form of accountability for you. She didn't even get a slap on the wrist. James Comey said that she was extremely careless. Oh, boo-hoo. Hillary Clinton knew what that C in parentheses meant. It was classified. And she knew exactly what she was doing, but she knew she couldn't get away with it. That's why she did it. She had something to hide. This is not surprising, but, I'm glad that we have this report because it does shed light on details that I was pretty curious about.